watching Buzz with Jess Lujan.
Good evening, Guam. I'm Jess Lujan. Welcome to this edition of The Buzz. Very exciting show tonight. Boy, we're really getting cultural this month. We got the folks here that are responsible for this Camp Rojas film project called the Under the American Sun. We have the director, producer, and an associate of this film project. We have Bernie Pervito Schumann.
Yes.
Bernie, how you doing? We have Christine Guevara Akinde. Yes, okay. And then we also have director Bert Sardoma Jr. And Bert, I see him every other Tuesday because he works for the Lieutenant Governor's office and with the Island Wide Beautification Task Force as well. So he's like clockwork on radio every Tuesday with us. But good evening, ladies, gentlemen. How you doing?
Half a day.
Hey, this project is fantastic. As a matter of fact, when this kind of brought memories up of the Camp Rojas when we were talking years ago, 2006. About the impending military buildup and the need again for foreign workers to come in here, and everything that was being done at the time. Again, reminiscent of the folks that came out here, your parents, grandparents, and all that came out here, Camp Rojas, and if it's not the biggest, again, group of individuals that came out here to help build up Guam post World War II. Bernie.
Well, in 2006, we wanted to understand our plight, our parents' plight as laborers. They never quite told us much about their history, and we wanted to make sure we understood it. And so we were in a film workshop, Bert and I, and we ended up asking ourselves, well, how do we want to document this? And I said, well, let's find out first from our parents and ask them. So we started looking at our photo albums and our photos, and that's how it all started. One photo turned into another photo, into another story, into stories, and it was never ending. So finally we decided we're going to use the camera and we're going to use the medium of film to tell their story.
You know, as a matter of fact, when the Filipino workers came out here, basically they were brought in here not under the H-2 program, it was called in the military side. It was the parole system that they used, and there was something they could have used as well in this impending military buildup. And so, yeah, very reminiscent because actually a lot you guys are Visayas, right? Yeah. And of course, the majority of the folks, if you're a Filipino and live in the South, especially Agate, Santa Rita, it's a good chance that either your father or grandfather came out of the Camp Rojas, a camp there, and out of the Visayas. Bert?
Yeah, well, I always knew where my dad came from and stuff like that. But like what Bernie was saying earlier, they don't really talk about it. There's no details. I vaguely remember going down to the camp if it was down there. I know we were always down at Agate and Santa Rita visiting our friends. When I was younger, it's like, wow, we got a lot of uncles down in Agate.
They're all your uncles.
Now let me ask you this: Why do you think it is that it wasn't talked about? Was it maybe a darker time of their life? What was it that it didn't bring up the discussion?
I think a story I remember about my father was he said when he came, he was 19. He came in 1948, and he talked about when they ate. He says, when it's time to eat, you have to eat, or there'll be no more food. And I was like, and we're so fortunate now, we don't starve the way they did. Or they said at a certain time, if they go off camp, they had to be back or they locked the gate. So that just really hit me, like, kind of like prisoners or something,
They were, in essence, they were. I remember times, I didn't remember Camp Rojas so much. I think remember maybe years after, because you had other construction companies at the time that brought in workers as well. Yeah, Western and White and all that. But they had similar camps. They had to be in camps, and maybe I think they got one day off a week, and that's how they befriended a lot of locals, and that's how after Typhoon Karen, a lot of the brick home, the cement homes started being built because, again, your fathers and grandfathers were out befriending, and a lot of them started construction companies, right?
I believe there were some construction companies
Yeah.
that came out of the Camp Rojas.
Sure, sure.
But there were other camps in
Sure,
Guam,
sure.
Camp Marbo, Camp BPM, and that
Yeah.
housed mostly, I believe, Tagalogs. So most of the visitors were
Ilocano.
Yeah.
and Ilocanos, yeah. So what we found out that these camps were also, a very thriving camp, but we wanted to pretty much focus on our parents because they
Sure.
were part of the Camp Rojas, and the camp was much bigger than I believe the other camps.
Yeah. Now, when you were growing up, was it discussion in your family, and how again, knowing you're of Filipino descent, that how you came about? I mean, to come here to Guam, was it a topic of discussion, or is it something again later on? Said, hey, we got to document this. Can you tell us your stories? Because again. A lot of our parents, most Filipinos, I know this, they don't want to reveal the hardships that they have gone through.
That's very true.
They want to, hey, look, give their sons and daughters a better life at their, and the misery that they're going to have to go through and everything like that. They're not going to tell you about it. I made a better life for you, and they hope that you as well give a better life to your kids as well. And that's why you see even up to now people leaving families from the Philippines and. I mean, flying, not seeing for years and years and years, but sending back money.
Money, right.
At the time, you must have been very hard because you don't have iPads, you don't have Instagram, you don't have
No
Twitter,
phone.
Facebook. Well, we had that.
RCA.
We had RCA that was about
No, I meant-
about $95 a minute or something like that.
Yeah.
that,
Oh, yeah.
And so
Yeah.
it was very hard, most especially
Yes.
when they were sending money home. Tell us about what your parents revealed to you, your dad's revealed to you.
Well, I always knew how my dad got here, but he never really talked about life in the camp. So it sparked our curiosity, of course. But I just know that they sacrificed that part of their life. They know it was hardship, but they knew there was a bigger picture down the road. And but life at home is, my dad started a business later, doing an international bazaar gift shop.
Sure.
Down where, down in right next to the old Nissan.
Oh
city.
down in yes.
We were down in the corn building.
Yeah.
And right across the Agania Heights, we owned a
Store.
little store there.
That's
and I
right.
think it was a Antalan's property.
Wow.
We knew a lot of people from the
Sure.
Agania Heights, and there were some friends and relatives that lived down there.
Well,
So
this
we were
part-
the few
Yeah.
besides that moved to the central.
Well,
Yeah,
this must have
yeah.
been a hard time as well because the Philippines as well they were recuperating from the war just like us. So it must have been hard for them to leave their families. Again, they've gone through the war like we have. What did it take? I mean, how do they go about? How do they get recruited to come to Guam? And what was that one thing? I mean, because I'm sure there wasn't anybody before them that went abroad. I mean, they're going. We don't know where the heck we're going to. Do we know what Guam is? We know that we're going to rebuild after a war. We just went through a war. Am I ever going to see my family again? They must have probably said, when they said goodbye to their families, they probably said, we probably won't see them again, yeah?
Yes, I'm glad you brought that up. My father came from Bacolod, which is a separate island, so he had to travel from one island to the other to take a boat or a ship. Then that's where he was recruited, Iloilo, and that's where he met my mom. Well, after he came here, he went back home maybe 3 times because I have 3 siblings born there, and there was 4 of us born here. So I'm not sure how hard it was there because I was born and raised here. So 3 there and 4 here. And I'm glad you asked that because she was saying most of them were from Iloilo, and I mentioned about Bacolod, and she didn't know that they were from outer islands.
Other islands, yeah.
Yeah, so he traveled from one island to the other, which is great, or I wouldn't be.
And again, at that time, you don't have you didn't have the same type of public transportation that you had back then. Now, so you still had a lot of walking. Probably, I mean, what would take
Probably they didn't even have
hours?
slippers, no
Yeah, probably.
worries.
What would take a couple of hours? Probably take
Yes.
a couple of days to get
Yeah.
the recruitment, and then on all that, especially if you don't have family. But Bernie, I've known you for years, right? And it's funny because when you started this whole project, I mean, I knew you were Filipina. I knew you were Filipino descent, but I never knew your dad was a Camp Rojas person in there, worker in there. And when you learn all this, I mean, what did that do to Bernie? I mean, did this give you a new light?
Well, I think going back to the earlier question, my dad always reminded us at the dinner table, I had nothing in my pocket when I came here. I made my money, selling lumpia and selling puto, in the barrio. So we knew he grew up in the barrio life, very poor.
Sure.
So coming here, he reminded us about how poor he was in the Philippines. What it was like in the camp, I don't recall him saying much other than he had a lot of friends.
Sure.
And so my dad, I believe, was in the camp for about 10 years. He didn't talk much about life in the camp because as I was born and raised in Guam, and we eventually, of course, were U.S. citizens. But I know my dad and my mom were separated for 6 years because he did go back to the Philippines and marry my mom. But they were separated for 6 years.
6 years.
So when you talk about the separation and the sacrifice of, again, being apart, my dad, I believe, knew that, eventually he petitioned my mom to come over to Guam. And he became a U.S. citizen because after the Organic Act kicked in, after the McCarran Act, they were they can become permanent residents and then become U.S. naturalized citizens. So my dad never quite talked about the hardships of growing up in the barrios. That kind of like left his life when he came to Guam, but at the same time, you're right, they were recovering from the war.
Sure.
And it was it was a period, I think both the local and the Filipino laborers' time in their life when they were trying to all be happy.
Of course, and leaving their family again, recuperating, coming out of this war.
You have to remember they were 18, 19, probably between 18 to 25. When we were looking at the manifest, there was like about 300 people on one ship, 500 people on one ship, names of our friends that we grew up with that we didn't even know where they were part of Camp Rojas. So I think looking at how they came here by ship.
Kind of like the modern Magellan.
Exactly. So they come to Guam and here they are. They're trying to start a new life. And, it was very uncertain.
Didn't know anything,
They didn't know they were going to become U.S. citizens.
And a lot of them didn't know to speak English at the time.